The crystal ships halted their retreat. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the aggressive resonance patterns of their ships began to change, shifting to a frequency that Elena's engineers recognized as an attempt at communication. Over the next few hours, an unprecedented dialogue began. The Crystal Collective, for the first time in their million-year history, encountered a civilization that offered them something they had never considered: the possibility that perfection could exist in diversity rather than unity. In the months that followed, humanity and the Crystal Collective began a careful exchange of knowledge. The collective learned to appreciate the resilience that came from maintaining multiple technological approaches, while humanity gained insights into crystal technology that could be integrated selectively rather than completely. The legacy fleet, once considered obsolete, became the bridge between these two different approaches to civilization. Their ability to operate independently of advanced networks while still understanding their value proved that progress didn't have to mean abandoning the lessons of the past. On the bridge of the Relentless, Elena looked out at the stars, now shared by both human and crystal ships. Sometimes, she told her crew, victory isn't about defeating an enemy. It's about showing them, and ourselves, that there's always another way forward. The ship's old engines hummed steadily as they patrolled the space lanes, ready to face whatever new challenges the universe might bring. They had learned that true advancement wasn't about replacing the old with the new, but about understanding when to use each tool at their disposal. In the end, the legacy fleet had done more than save humanity from absorption into the crystal network. They had preserved something even more valuable: the right to choose their own path into the future, carrying forward the best of their past while embracing the possibilities of tomorrow. Commander Elena Reyes stood at the viewport of the MSV Hyperion, watching distant stars drift by like scattered diamonds on black velvet. The mining vessel's worn hull and outdated systems made it seem like just another piece of space debris, perfect for their mission. 6 months ago, the Kraxan Empire had arrived at the edges of human space, demanding submission. Their response had been simple: humanity would never kneel. "Status report," Elena called out, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, each member chosen not just for their skills, but for their ability to maintain composure under extreme pressure. "All systems nominal, Commander," Lieutenant James Rodriguez reported from his station. "The quantum core is masked perfectly behind the old fusion signature. Even their most advanced scanners would only see a decommissioned mining vessel." Elena allowed herself a small smile. The Hyperion represented humanity's greatest gambit, a vessel that appeared worthless on the surface, but carried within it technology that would change the course of the war. Dr. Marcus Kane, their lead physicist, had theorized that the quantum manipulation field they'd developed could disrupt the very fabric of space-time. They tested it on a small scale, but nothing like what they planned now. "Kraxam patrol detected at the edge of the Arcturus sector," announced Lieutenant Maya Patel, her fingers dancing across the tactical display. "3 heavy cruisers, moving in standard search pattern. They'll detect us within the hour." Elena nodded, exactly as planned. The Kraxan Empire had conquered 12 species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, each time following the same pattern: identify the strongest military asset of their target and crush it publicly. They expected humanity to protect their most advanced vessels, not send out what appeared to be garbage. Deep in the Hyperion's core, a team of engineers led by Chief Torres monitored the quantum manipulation device. The technology was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to match the Kraxan's superior weapons, they had found a way to turn space itself into a weapon. "Message from Fleet Command," Rodriguez announced. "Admiral Chen sends their regards and reminds us that the best trap is the one your enemy thinks they're too smart to fall for." The bridge crew shared knowing looks. They had trained for months for this mission, running countless simulations. The Kraxan's arrogance would be their undoing. Their empire spanned centuries, and in all that time, They had never encountered a species that could challenge their technological superiority. They had grown complacent, predictable. Multiple targeting locks detected, Maya reported calmly. They're moving to surround us. Elena straightened her uniform. Send the distress signal. Make it look good. A damaged mining vessel, lost and low on fuel. Let's give them exactly what they expect to see. The Hyperion systems began broadcasting a weak distress beacon, the kind of signal that screamed easy target to any military vessel. The Kraxan cruisers took the bait, moving into an attack formation that would have been perfect against any normal vessel. They're charging weapons, Maya announced. Primary batteries targeted on our engine section. Elena keyed the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the commander. Remember your training. Remember Earth. Remember why we're here. She paused, looking at each member of her bridge crew. Initiate Operation Lighthouse. Deep within the Hyperion, the quantum core began to hum. The device they'd hidden wasn't just a weapon. It was humanity's proof that intelligence and innovation could overcome raw power. The Kraxans had spent centuries perfecting their energy weapons and shield technology. Humanity had spent those same centuries learning to think differently. The first Kraxan shots streaked across space, their energy weapons designed to cripple vessels 10 times the Hyperion size. They struck the mining vessel's shields and passed through as if they weren't there, exactly as planned. Hull breaches detected in sections 15 through 18, Rodriguez reported, fighting to keep the satisfaction from his voice. They think they've crippled us. Elena watched as the Kraxan vessels moved closer, no doubt preparing to broadcast their victory across the Empire's communication networks. The trap was almost ready. Quantum core at full power, Chief Torres reported from engineering. Field stabilized and ready for activation. Elena took a deep breath. Humanity had spent generations looking up at the stars, dreaming of their place among them. The Kraxan Empire thought they could simply sweep in and take that dream away. They were about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating human ingenuity. The space around the Hyperion began to twist, reality itself bending to humanity's will. The Kraxan vessels, for all their advanced technology, suddenly found themselves trapped in a web of distorted spacetime. Their weapons fired wildly, energy beams bending back on themselves. Their communications went dark as the quantum field disrupted every frequency they tried to use. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't the technology itself. It was their ability to imagine solutions that their enemies would never see coming. As Elena watched the Kraxan ships struggle against forces they couldn't understand, she knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity wasn't just another species to be conquered. They were the ones who would change everything. Echoes of defiance. Dr. Marcus Kane watched the quantum field readings with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The theoretical models had predicted this, but seeing it in action was something else entirely. The space around the Hyperion had become a maelstrom of twisted physics, and the Kraxan ships were caught in its grip like leaves in a hurricane. The field strength is holding at 87% above projected levels, he announced, his voice carrying across the science bay. The Kraxan's shield harmonics are actually amplifying the effect. He couldn't keep the excitement from his voice. Years of research, countless failed experiments, and now, validation. The deck beneath them shuddered as another Kraxan vessel tried to break free, its engines screaming against forces they were never designed to counter. Through the bay's observation window, Kane watched as ribbons of blue-white energy curved through space, bending light itself around the trapped ships. Dr. Kane. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. We're detecting power spikes from the Kraxan vessels. They're trying to overload their cores to break free. Kane's fingers flew across his console, making minute adjustments to the quantum field. This was the moment he feared, the moment when theory met desperate reality. Commander Reyes, we need to modulate the field frequency. They're attempting to create a resonance cascade. On the bridge, Elena Reyes processed the information with practiced calm. Do it. Lieutenant Patel, Prepare to shift our position. If they want to play with physics, let's show them who wrote the rulebook." The Hyperion's engines pulsed, moving the vessel in a precise pattern that Kane had spent months calculating. The quantum field moved with them, its effects rippling through space like waves in a pond. The Kraxan ships, still struggling against the distortion, found their every attempt to escape countered before they could even complete it. "Their shield frequencies are destabilizing," Maya reported from Tactical. "Whatever they're trying isn't working." Kane allowed himself a grim smile. The Kraxans had ruled space for so long they'd forgotten that technology wasn't just about power, it was about understanding. His team had spent years studying the fundamental forces of the universe, not to overpower them, but to work with them. "Commander," Kane called out, "I'm detecting unusual readings from their weapon systems. They're attempting to synchronize their fire. If they succeed, the energy discharge could create a temporary rupture in the quantum field." Elena's response was immediate. "Chief Torres, route additional power to the field generators." "Dr. Kane, can we use their own energy against them?" "Already on it," Kane replied, his mind racing through calculations. "The quantum field can be tuned to their weapon frequency. Instead of fighting their energy discharge, we'll let it feed back into their own systems." The science bay erupted into activity as Kane's team worked to implement the modifications. This was why humans had survived countless challenges throughout their history. The ability to adapt, to turn an enemy's strength into a weakness. Through the viewport, the space around the Kraxan ships began to shimmer with new energy as they prepared their synchronized attack. The Empire's ships were marvels of engineering, each one capable of destroying a small fleet. But today, that power would prove to be their undoing. "Quantum field modifications complete," Kane announced. "The trap is reset." The Kraxan vessels fired as one, their energy weapons cutting through space with enough power to vaporize a small moon. But instead of disrupting the quantum field, the energy was caught, channeled, and reflected. Their own weapons' power turned the space around them into a prison of light and force. Multiple system failures detected across all Kraxan vessels, Maya reported, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "Their weapons are offline, shields are collapsing, and their engines are going into emergency shutdown." Kane watched as the mighty warships of the Kraxan Empire hung helpless in space, their own power turned against them. It was a victory not just of technology, but of understanding. The Kraxans had built their empire on the belief that superior firepower guaranteed victory. Humanity had just proved them wrong. "Dr. Kane," Elena's voice came through clear and determined, "prepare to implement Phase 2. Let's make sure the whole galaxy knows what happened here." As Kane worked, he couldn't help but think about the message they were sending. The Kraxans had expected to find a primitive species clinging to outdated technology. Instead, they'd found humans. Adaptable, innovative, and far more dangerous than they appeared. The quantum field continued to hold the Kraxan ships in its grip, but now it was also serving another purpose. Every sensor in range would detect what was happening here. Every species that had ever feared the Empire would see that they weren't invincible. "Phase 2 ready, Commander," Kane reported. "On your order." The Hyperion's quantum field began to pulse in a precise pattern, sending ripples through space-time that would be detectable across half the galaxy. It wasn't just a signal, it was a message. Humanity wasn't just fighting back, they were announcing their presence to every species watching. The age of Kraxan dominance was over. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would help write the new rules. Admiral Viktor Petrov stood before the holographic display in Earth's Central Command, watching as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The quantum pulses from the Hyperion had done more than just announce humanity's victory. They had sparked a fire that was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. "Another uprising in the Centauri sector," reported strategic analyst Olivia Blackwood, her dark eyes scanning incoming data streams. "The Nexarians have seized 3 Kraxan orbital platforms. They're using our quantum field specifications to disable Empire ships." The Admiral nodded slowly, his weathered face illuminated by the shifting lights of the tactical display. When they'd planned Operation Lighthouse, they'd hoped to prove humanity's worth as a defender. What they'd created instead was a revolution. The Kraxan Empire is mobilizing their third fleet, Lieutenant Commander Jackson announced from his station. Long-range sensors show they're gathering at least 300 vessels near the Magellan Gap. Petrov exchanged glances with Fleet Captain Maria Santos, his second-in-command. They had expected retaliation, but the speed of the Empire's response suggested something more than mere revenge. "They're scared," Maria observed, her voice low. "For the first time in centuries, they're actually scared." The tactical display shifted, showing new movement patterns across Kraxan-controlled space. Dozens of subjected species, many of whom had lived under Imperial rule for generations, were rising up. The Hyperion's demonstration had shown them something they'd thought impossible. The Empire could be beaten. "Message from Commander Reyes," Jackson reported. "The Hyperion has completed its rendezvous with the Arcturian resistance. They're transferring the quantum field specifications now." Petrov allowed himself a small smile. Elena and her crew had done more than win a battle. They had changed the rules of warfare itself. The Kraxans had built their empire on the assumption that superior technology meant inevitable victory. Now, every species under their control had seen that innovation and adaptability could overcome brute force. "Sir," Olivia called out, her voice tight with urgency. "We're detecting unusual activity from the Empire's capital world. Their Emperor is making an unprecedented broadcast to all sectors." The holographic display shifted, showing the stern face of Emperor Vexthor, supreme ruler of the Kraxan Empire. His usually immaculate appearance was marred by subtle signs of strain, his elaborate ceremonial armor seeming more like a costume than a symbol of authority. To all subjects of the Empire, the Emperor's voice boomed through the command center. "The recent acts of terrorism by the human species and their collaborators will not go unpunished. Their primitive deception has temporarily inconvenienced our forces, but make no mistake, this insult to imperial order will be answered with overwhelming force." Maria snorted softly. "He still doesn't get it, does he? This was never about force." The Emperor continued, his voice growing harder. "To any who would aid these insurgents, know this: the Empire's memory is long, and our retribution absolute. The humans will learn, as all species must, that resistance to progress is futile." "Progress," Petrov muttered. "Is that what they call subjugation now?" The broadcast continued, but the Admiral's attention was drawn to new data streaming in from their deep space monitoring network. The Kraxan Third Fleet was moving faster than expected, but not toward Earth as they'd anticipated. "They're targeting our allies," Olivia announced, confirming his suspicions. "Multiple Kraxan battle groups are moving to suppress the uprisings. They're prioritizing worlds with shipbuilding capabilities." Petrov straightened, his military training kicking in. "Send word to all our deployed vessels. Priority 1 message to Commander Reyes. Operation Lighthouse is moving to Phase 3 ahead of schedule." The command center erupted into focused activity. They had planned for this, but the timing would be tight. The Empire was trying to isolate and crush each resistance movement before they could coordinate their efforts. "Message from Dr. Kane on the Hyperion," Jackson reported. "He says the quantum field modifications are ready. They can begin transmitting the enhanced specifications to allied worlds within the hour." Petrov nodded grimly. The Kraxans thought they were dealing with a single rebellious species, but humanity had spent its entire history learning to work with others, to share knowledge, to adapt and grow together. "Send the authorization code," he ordered, "and get me a channel to the Arcturian High Council. It's time to show the Empire what real progress looks like." As the command center buzzed with activity, Petrov watched the tactical display shift again. Across the galaxy, points of light began to pulse in sequence, quantum fields activating on dozens of worlds, created by beings who until recently had been subjects of the Empire. The Kraxans had spent centuries building walls between species, keeping them isolated and dependent. But humanity had just given the galaxy something more powerful than any weapon. They had given them hope, and the means to forge their own destiny. The real war was just beginning, and this time, the Empire would face something they had never truly understood. The power of unity born not from force, but from choice. Chief Engineer Torres wiped sweat from her brow as she crawled through the Hyperion's maintenance shaft. Around her, the ship's quantum core hummed with an intensity that made her teeth ache. Status report on the containment field. Holding at 93%, her assistant called back through the comm. But the Kraxans are using something new, some kind of resonance weapon. It's putting strain on the stabilizers we didn't anticipate. Through the ship's hull, she could feel the vibrations of nearby combat. The Empire had returned with technology specifically designed to counter the quantum fields that had humbled them before. They'd adapted faster than anyone had expected. "Commander," Torres called out as she worked, "whatever they're using, it's not just disrupting our field, it's trying to collapse space-time itself. They're willing to rip holes in reality just to get to us." On the bridge, Commander Elena Reyes watched as the massive Kraxan armada pressed their attack. The Empire had brought a fleet of over 500 ships, each equipped with the new weapons. They weren't just trying to win. They were trying to erase the very memory of defeat. Multiple quantum field failures detected across the sector. Lieutenant Maya Patel reported, her voice tight. "The Arcturian defense platforms are going dark one by one. Their fields can't handle the resonance weapons." Alina's mind raced. The Empire's response had been more devastating than they'd anticipated. They hadn't just developed countermeasures. They'd created weapons that threatened the fabric of space itself. It was the act of an empire that would rather destroy everything than accept change. "Dr. Kane," she called out, "what are we looking at if those weapons continue to fire?" The physicist's voice came back grim. "The resonance effect is cascading. They're not just attacking our ships, they're creating tears in space-time. If this continues, they could destabilize this entire sector of space. Billions would die." Elena felt a cold anger settle in her chest. The Kraxans had just shown their true nature. They would rather destroy the galaxy than lose control of it. But humanity had faced extinction-level threats before. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and their own near destruction. They had learned from each crisis, grown stronger, more adaptable. "Chief Torres," she called out, "what if we don't fight the resonance? What if we work with it instead?" There was a pause on the line as Torres processed the idea. "You mean, like a wave, use their own energy to create a bigger effect?" "Exactly," Elena confirmed. "Dr. Kane, could we modify our quantum field to amplify the resonance weapon's effect, but control its direction?" "It's possible," Kane replied, excitement creeping into his voice. "If we can synchronize all our remaining quantum fields, we could create a channeled cascade. Turn their weapon of destruction into a tool of containment." Elena smiled grimly. Once again, humanity would survive not by being the strongest, but by being the most adaptable. "Send the modifications to all Allied ships. Lieutenant Rodriguez, get me a channel to Admiral Petrov. We need to coordinate this precisely." As the crew worked to implement the new strategy, Elena watched the Kraxan fleet press forward. They thought they had won, that their overwhelming force and willingness to destroy everything would ensure victory. They still hadn't learned. "Quantum field modifications complete," Kane reported. "All Allied ships are synchronized. The Arcturians have linked their remaining platforms to our network." Elena took a deep breath. "All ships on my mark, invert your quantum fields. Let's show the Empire what happens when you push too far." The order went out, and across the battlefield, quantum fields shifted in perfect harmony. The Kraxan resonance weapons fired, their destructive energy reaching out to tear reality apart. But this time, something different happened. The quantum fields caught the resonance energy and channeled it, creating a massive, controlled distortion in space. The Kraxan fleet found itself trapped in a web of its own making. their weapons' energy turned back against them in a carefully controlled cascade. "It's working," Kane exclaimed. "The resonance is contained. Their weapons are feeding back into the quantum network, strengthening our control." Elena watched as the mighty Kraxan fleet struggled against forces they had created but could no longer control. Their attempt to destroy everything had instead given humanity and its allies the means to contain them. "Message from Admiral Petrov," Rodriguez announced. "The quantum network is holding across all sectors. The Kraxan fleet is completely immobilized." Through the viewport, Elena could see the Empire's ships hanging helpless in space, trapped in a prison of their own destructive energy. They had tried to break humanity's spirit with overwhelming force, but had instead demonstrated why adaptability would always triumph over raw power. "Send word to all Allied ships," she ordered. "Phase 4 begins now. Let's show the Empire that the galaxy doesn't belong to those who would destroy it. It belongs to those who would protect it." The battle wasn't over, but its nature had changed. The Empire had just learned that every weapon they created could be turned against them. Every advantage they held could become a weakness. Humanity had shared not just its technology, but its most powerful trait: the ability to adapt and overcome. The Great Hall of the Galactic Conclave fell silent as Commander Elena Reyes stepped onto the speaking platform. Around her, representatives from 100 species, former subjects of the Kraxan Empire and independent worlds alike, watched with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Behind her, through the hall's crystalline viewport, the contained Kraxan fleet hung suspended in the quantum field, a testament to the price of hubris. 3 months ago, Elena began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. The Kraxan Empire believed they could subjugate humanity through force. Today, they have learned what countless others throughout human history discovered: that true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to adapt and unite. Admiral Petrov stood at the back of the hall, watching as former enemies became allies: the Arcturians, with their mastery of stellar engineering; the Nexarians, whose biological technology had evolved beyond anything humanity had imagined. Each species brought unique perspectives, different ways of seeing the universe. "The quantum field technology that saved us was not just a human achievement," Elena continued. "It was built on principles that every species here has glimpsed through their own journey to the stars. We simply found a new way to look at them." Dr. Kane, seated among a group of scientists from various worlds, nodded in agreement. The past weeks had seen an unprecedented exchange of knowledge. The quantum field technology had been just the beginning. When species worked together, shared their understanding, the possibilities became endless. The Empire believed that diversity was weakness. Elena's voice grew stronger. They sought to impose their vision of progress through force. But look around you. Every species in this hall has a unique way of seeing the universe, of solving problems. Together, we are not just stronger. We are capable of things none of us could achieve alone. Through secure channels, the proceedings were being broadcast across the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, beings who had lived under imperial rule for generations watched as a new future took shape. "We have contained the Empire's fleet," Elena acknowledged. "But that is not our victory. Our triumph lies in what we choose to do next." The Kraxans believed that power flowed from the ability to destroy. "We will show them a greater power, the strength that comes from choosing to create." Chief Torres, watching from the Hyperion's bridge, smiled as she saw the reactions across the hall. The engineering teams from different species had already begun collaborating on ways to use the quantum field technology for exploration rather than warfare. The Empire's weapon of last resort had become a tool for pushing back the boundaries of known space. "The choice before us is simple," Elena continued. "We can use this moment to punish, to seek revenge for centuries of oppression. Or we can do something unprecedented. We can offer the Empire a chance to join us as equals, to be part of something greater than conquest." A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. This was not what anyone had expected. The Empire had tried to destroy them all, and humanity was suggesting mercy. To the Empire, this will look like weakness, Alina acknowledged. But those of us who have faced extinction, who have overcome impossible odds, know better. The greatest strength lies not in standing alone, but in choosing to stand together. Admiral Petrov watched as understanding spread through the hall. This was why humanity had survived every crisis it had faced, not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they had learned to adapt, to cooperate, to find strength in diversity. The quantum fields that hold the Empire's fleet will be deactivated, Alina announced, not because we trust them, but because we choose to be better than fear. We offer them the same choice that every species here has made, to join a community of equals, where strength comes from cooperation rather than conquest. The hall erupted in discussion, but there was no anger in it. They had all seen what was possible when different species worked together. The Empire's greatest weapon had been turned into a tool for peace, not through superior force, but through the simple choice to see things differently. This is how humanity survives, Alina concluded, not by being the strongest, but by being adaptable. Not by standing alone, but by reaching out to others. The Empire thought they found a primitive species clinging to outdated technology. Instead, they found something far more powerful. They found a species that had learned to turn enemies into allies, to transform weapons into tools of peace. As she stepped down from the platform, Alina caught Admiral Petrov's approving nod. The Hyperion's mission had started as a desperate gambit to prove humanity's worth. It had ended by proving something far more important, that the strongest force in the universe wasn't technology or weapons, but the simple choice to work together. In the space above them, the quantum fields holding the Empire's fleet began to dissolve. It was a risk, but one worth taking. Humanity had shown the galaxy a different kind of strength. Now it was time to show them a different kind of victory, one achieved not through destruction, but through the courage to offer peace. The age of empire was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and humanity, the species that had seemed so primitive and weak, had helped to light the way.